Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. I hope that you are all well, and if you are new, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today I am so excited to finally be sharing this list with you. It's been a while in the making. I am going to talk about 14 books that I have put on my TBR because of you. These are books that people recommended either on my videos, on my channel, on Instagram, or as I've been watching other people's videos, and I've thought that, hey, those books sound really good. I am always adding to my TBR. It's gigantic, and I am always getting recommendations, which I absolutely love. So these are only a handful of some that I thought I would highlight and share with all of you, because I think that these might be books that you might want to add to your TBR as well. So I will be sure to leave links of videos and channels mentioned in the description box below, so you can please go check those out. The first book recommendation came from one of my subscribers, Jacqueline. Jacqueline commented, this was on my video of most anticipated books that were being published between April and June of 2023. And Jacqueline said that she has been recommending this book to everyone, and it's Fellowship Point by Alice Elliott Dark. When someone is willing to recommend a book to everyone, that is very high praise. So I checked it out. It was published in July, and it is about Agnes and Polly. I am a sucker for a book about female friendship, so it had me already. And it seems that it is also about secrets and the threat of those secrets being exposed. It's about loyalty to friends and family. All of that interested me, so thanks to Jacqueline for bringing this book to my attention. The next recommendation comes from Michael Romeo Talks Books. I was watching his tag video. The tag was the Have You Chosen Wisely book tag. And the tag is about 3 books that destroyed you and 3 books that restored you. In that video, he mentions Zombie by Joyce Carol Oates, which I really want to read, and Sophie's Choice by William Styron, which has been on my TBR forever. So you might be able to tell I'm more on the destroyed side. And the book that I added to my TBR was The Man in My Basement by Walter Mosley. I've never heard of this author before. And it's basically about a black man who rents his basement apartment to a white man. And the book, Michael said the book gets darker and darker, and that the ending will punch you in the gut. So I was like, sign me up for that. I'm in. Next on my list is a recommendation from Monica at Dog-Eared Musings. I put Patricia Wants to Cuddle by Samantha Lee Allen on my TBR. Monica talks about this book as a book to read if you like Love is Blind, the show Love is Blind. Now, I'm not a Love is Blind fan. I've never watched it. But as she talked about Patricia Wants to Cuddle, it reminded me of the book One to Watch by Kate Stayman London. Only because they both center around a reality dating show. I really enjoyed One to Watch, and Patricia Wants to Cuddle caught my attention and my interest because it is a horror book. Monica said it has B horror movie vibes. It's also funny and wacky, and she also shared pairings and mentioned Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth, which is still on my TBR, so maybe when I can, I will read both of them together. Next up is a recommendation from Gemma, from Gem of Books. This book is from her very bookish vlog that she did, and I hadn't heard of this book. And I think I may have seen it once or twice after watching the video, and the book is Hex by Jenny Fagan. Now, Gemma was gifted this book by Jack from Spread Book Joy, and as soon as Gemma said that it was about Gellis Duncan, I was like, wait a minute, I know Gellis Duncan. So I am a big fan of the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon, and Gellis Duncan is one of the characters in that series, in Outlander. So people think she is a witch, and she's a great character. I am definitely interested to see what Jenny Fagan does with her story in this book. So we will see. Okay, the next book was also mentioned in one of Gemma's videos, but it's really a recommendation from Charlie Brook Reads. So Charlie recommended The Eighth Life by Nino Heretischvili, I think it is, and translated from the German by Ruth Martin and Charlotte Collins. So Charlie talks about this in Gemma's video, Booktuber's Most Miserable Books. Well, that's my thing. So I like miserable books. And then Charlie said, there is a magical hot chocolate recipe. And I thought for sure this book is for me. The book is massive, it's huge, but Charlie says that it's worth it. So I'm going to take her word for it. I also just realized that I'm telling you about 2 Gemma videos with recommendations from 2 other booktubers. That's kind of funny, but they're all great, and I will link all of them below, so please go check them out. Okay, next I have Chatty at Chatty the Mad Chatter. Now this is one of those times where the recommendation kind of came at like the perfect time. So while I was in Italy in May, we visited the Basilica of Santa Croce in Florence. And this basilica is like the burial place of the who's who of Florence, like Michelangelo and Galileo, plus many, many others. When we were at Galileo's tomb, the guide started telling us this story about his burial and the story of his daughter. So the 2 of them, Galileo and his daughter, are now buried together. And if I can find my picture of the tomb, hopefully I will show it to you right now. So the story was very interesting, and I thought, wouldn't that make a really great book? So then I got home and I'm watching Chatty's video, which is the Why Haven't I Read These Yet tag, which is a tag I tagged her in, by the way. And one of the first books that she talks about is Galileo's Daughter by Deva Sobel. I was so excited. So this book went on my TBR so fast, and I thought that it was kind of neat how that all came together. Okay, next up is my friend Lindy from Magpie Reads. Lindy often influences my reading, and there were 2 books that I was interested in when I was watching 2 of Lindy's, she does Friday Reads videos. So you won't be surprised if you watch Lindy in my channel that these books are from Canadian authors. And the first is from a French Canadian and would actually work for Women in Translation Month, so heads up about that. And it's To the Forest by Agnès Barbeau-Lavalette, and it's translated from the French by Rhonda Mullins. So Lindy spoke very highly of this book, which is less than 200 pages long, and it takes place at the beginning of the pandemic, and it follows 2 families. So there's a lot of nature writing, and Lindy said that the writing is beautiful. And I do have another book on my shelf from this author, and I have yet to read it. So I really want to see what her books are all about. The other book that Lindy recommended is nonfiction, and just as the previous book was short, this one is quite big. It's over 500 pages, I'm sure. It is Fire Weather by John Vaillant, and there are a few reasons why I really want to read this. Again, Lindy spoke very highly of this book, saying that she was recommending it to everyone at the time. And as you know, I read a lot of Can Lit, but I don't read a lot of nonfiction Canadian books. Some, but not a lot, and mostly memoirs. So I would like to look more at Canadian nonfiction. That might be one of my goals next year, especially when it's during my time. So Fire Weather is about the wildfire that literally took over Fort McMurray here in northern Alberta in 2016. People had to flee from their homes. I knew people who were working up there at the time, and it was devastating. I do remember watching it on the news. We were in Ontario at that time, and it was horrifying. And now that I live in Alberta and have been closer in many ways to the forest fires, it's something that I pay a lot more attention to. And I think both of these books, which were Lindy's weekly top reads, just might make it into my top reads as well. Next on my list is Charlotte Malloy. Charlotte gave 10 book recommendations for Women in Translation Month, and this was a great video, and there were several books on her list that I want to read that are already on my TBR, and some that I even have on my shelves. So there was one that I had to add to my TBR, and that was Body Kintsugi by Senka Merrick, and it's translated from the Bosnian by Celia Hawksworth. What drew me to this book was the concept of kintsugi, which is a Japanese art form of broken pottery being put back together, and the cracks are painted with gold. So I love this concept, and the book takes this idea and uses it in the story with a female character who has cancer. So I am very intrigued by this one. Now we're going to Instagram for the next book, and one of my favorite Canadian Instagrammers is Allison. She reads a lot of Can Lit as well, and she posted about a book that I immediately put on my TBR, and it's I Got a Name, The Murder of Crystal Senek. This is by Eliza Robertson with Niles Dolphin. As I said, when it comes to Canadian nonfiction, it's usually memoirs, and I would say the second is true crime. So here's the true crime one. This is the story of Crystal, who was 29 in 1992 when she was murdered in her home in the Yukon. She had tried to help a friend leave an abusive husband, but the husband murdered Crystal, then disappeared, hasn't been found since. This book is bringing new light to this case that I've never heard of, and my guess is that most Canadians haven't heard of it. I'm sure the book will explore why that is. Allison said that this is good on audio, so I may try it that way if I can get my hands on it. Another subscriber left a comment on my top books of 2023, the fiction edition, and the recommendation came from Julie Johnson, who said that her recent favorite fiction is The Covenant of Water, and this is by Abraham Verghese. I'm not sure how he says his last name, actually. And this is an author that I've had on my shelves. I've heard great things about and still haven't read, but I had to add this book to my TBR because Julie described it as an epic, multi-generational story and redemptive. And I love all of those things. So those would be buzzwords for me. So I hope to get to this. I've even seen it in the bookstore, and it has a beautiful cover, and I didn't buy it, but almost. From another Best Books of 2023 video, Yo Beebs recommended Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. He said this is unique, thrilling, funny, magical, with beautiful moments. It's a coming of age story, which I enjoy. And as Yo-Beeps was talking about it, I was getting William Kent Kruger vibes. So I was just feeling compelled to read this, and it went on my TBR. Going back to another Women in Translation recommendation, I was watching Simon from Savage Reads. He did a video on Women in Translation recommendations, and the way that he talked about this book, I had to add it to my TBR. And the book is Purge by Sophie Oksanen, and it's translated from the Finnish by Lola Rogers. So you could tell by the way that Simon talked about Purge that it had an impact on him. He said it took him by surprise, so I love that. And he chose it based on the cover, so no judgment here. And it takes place in Estonia, which is not a setting that I often read about, if I've ever read about it. Simon doesn't say too much more than that because of spoilers. But he does say that it starts off as a fairy tale but becomes a thriller, and it's not for the faint of heart. So it has my attention. And then the final recommendation on my list comes from Sandy at Miss Reads a Lot. And the video was titled A New Favorite, one of the best books I've read all year. So I had high hopes, and the book was The Collected Regrets of Clover. This is by Mickey Brammer. It's about a death doula, and it has themes of grieving. The buzzwords for me were heartwarming and heartbreaking. I love that combination. And as Sandy talked about it, you can tell the book definitely affected her, and she talks about the characters in a great way. So I just think that this will be a book that I will enjoy. So these are the 14 books that I have put on my TBR over the past few months, I think, all because of you. And I want to thank everyone who recommended a book in the comments of my videos on Instagram, and to other booktubers for, putting out the content that you do and the recommendations that you do. You're always making my TBRs explode. So I will leave links to all of the booktubers and subscribers and videos that I mentioned below. So please go and check them all out. Please let me know if you have read any of these books, or if any of them are books that you want to read. Did any of them interest you? Have you been recommended a book recently that you immediately put on your TBR? I would love to hear all about it, and I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.